Hello everyone! A few weeks ago I started series where I'm swatching all of my coloring supplies. My first video was for the ZIG Clean Color Real Brush Markers or pens. I call them markers, to me it makes more sense. And after that first video I decided to include also coloring or painting examples in my review, or more like my thoughts about that particular coloring supply. So since I did not do that for the first video, in this video I'm going to color this flower and give you my thoughts on the ZIG Clean Color Real Brush Markers. What I really love about these markers is that you can use them in two different ways. The first way is just like you would use alcohol markers. Here on the smaller flower I use two purples, dark and light. The darker one I put on the bottom of the petal, and with the lighter marker, I spread the color to the top. Often, when I'm using the lighter color, I actually start from the top of the petal, going down, and then I blend the colors in the middle. This is just not to contaminate the colors too much. That's the first way using these markers. I will be finishing the coloring in a bit. The second way of using these markers is with water. I often use a water brush pen just to have less stuff on my desk, but you can use a normal brush and water in a cup if you want. All you need to do here is to add the marker color where you want the darkest part to be, and then using a damp brush you spread the color across, in this case the petal. Of course you can use both methods together and use the clean damp brush as a clean marker to make the color lighter, or blend the colors together. So I'm going to do the full coloring, doing the first technique on the smaller flower and the second technique on the bigger one, and then mixture of both on the leaves. Now let's talk about the markers and my thoughts on them. In general, watercolor markers are my favorite products for coloring. I have tried a few other brands, but not many, and so far the ZIGs are my absolute favorite. The reason why I really like them is because they have this tiny brush nib that is amazing for smaller images or tiny parts of an image. You can of course cover bigger parts, but getting into those tiny places is more important for me. If for example I wanted to cover a bigger background, I could use normal watercolors in combination. But that tiny brush really makes a difference. I actually recently learned what the real brush means. To be honest, I have never thought of that. But when Create a Smile did a review of the Karin markers, that's where I learned it. Because Karin markers have two types of markers, brush markers and real brush markers. I've seen other companies that have the brush markers, but I did not really see, except of the ZIGs, the real brush markers. The brush marker has a tip that is more like a felt tip, pointy felt tip like Copics. I think Tombow brush markers are similar as well. And the real brush markers have bristles, looking more like a painting brush. It might be that the real brush markers might be less pigmented, but I still prefer them. I would accept any of them, but if I had to choose, I prefer the real brush markers. You might be wondering why I'm talking about other brands than ZIGs. I mainly wanted to explain what the real brush mean, and as far as I know, ZIGs only have this kind of a tip. And even though I love the ZIGs and I would buy them again, but I really don't care about brands. Especially if it's not a budget brand, you are more likely to get a good product. Similar to watercolors, I really don't care if it is Winsor & Newton, Daniel Smith or Schmincke. To me, it's the same. All depends on the price and more importantly, availability. That's why I wanted to add another brand as an alternative. And even though I never use the Karin markers, they would be my alternative. So if you don't have access to ZIGs, Karin markers might be alternative, or vice versa. Price-wise, I would say they are pretty much similar. However, if they would be same price, I still would go with the ZIGs. And as I said, I love watercolor markers. They are my favorite product for coloring. I would highly recommend them for beginners because first of all, there are two ways how to use them. I would also say they are a great introduction to watercolor, as you don't have to be struggling with water control that much. And also you don't need that many colors because you can achieve light tones with water. I think that's all I have to say about them. If you enjoy coloring, I would really recommend them. There is nothing negative I could really say about them. Maybe the price, but that's the case for many similar products. And when it comes to the paper, I prefer watercolor paper. I mainly use the Canson XL, but here in this video I'm using a watercolor paper from a local store, Panduro or Creatima. It's their own brand. Many card makers like to use Bristol cardstock. I personally don't like it that much. If I use the markers together without water, it's fine. I would use it time to time, but if I use them with water, I'm not a fan. I prefer watercolor cardstock. Let me know in the comments what you think. I will play the rest of the coloring and then I will be back and I will show you one more way how you can use these markers, and then I will also make the card. So the coloring is done. I really love it. I really love the colors and how vibrant they are. As I said, there is one more way using these markers, and that is you can scribble the marker on an acrylic block or other slick surface, mix it with water and color that way. Or as I'm doing here, you can add splatter. If you use this method to color, just remember it will be much lighter compared to using the other methods. For the splatter, I also used golden watercolor paints, and I also used them to color the edges of the cardstock just to make a frame. This is something I like to do, but it's completely optional. I adhered the panel on top of a white card base using a liquid glue, and for the greeting I used this banner that says congratulations. I actually pre-made my sentiments and I just picked something that fits. You can use whatever sentiment that fits your occasion. Here is the card in a close-up. I love the colors, especially the bigger flower with the different shades. Absolutely love it. I think it looks really great. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can check out the video where I swatched the ZIG brush markers, or you can check out the video where I swatched and reviewed the watercolor pencils from Lidl. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.